universe has rules, many rules. Rules like gravity, magnetism, cause and effect. Don'ts, and more don'ts. But what if those rules could be bent, or even broken, or worse yet, discovered that they were never rules at all? Einstein described the universe as a four-dimensional fabric that warps and bends and in some cases folds in on itself. But a fabric is just a matrix, even a four-dimensional one. And what if changes could be affected upon that fabric that were not the result of even the most anomalous quantum effect? What if, instead, these unnatural alterations were the result of verified, certified, authorized free will? Enter magic. Magic, simply put, is the manipulation of the physical world without using the physical laws. The working of a ritual is intended to bring about a change that was not created from natural laws of cause and effect, but rather based on desire. One of magic's most peculiar aspects is the arbitrary nature of its rituals and preparations. Often in magic, one must prepare strange, seemingly useless herbs, say certain incantations in just the right way when the moon is just right, while staring down at symbols that look like they came from an Etch-a-Sketch or something. Now clearly, these strange procedures have only nominal effect on our reality in and of themselves. The incense rises and fades, the sound waves created by the incantations expand a short while and disappear, and as for the symbols, just carvings. Who chooses these rules? And by what force is our will executed if the recipe is followed? Well, it's safe to say that these rituals aren't for us, since our deepest desires came before the ritual. And if these rituals aren't for our sake, then it isn't by our energy that executes the various commands in witchcraft. It's like someone looking over your shoulder, waiting for you to do just the right thing at just the right times, and then executing your wishes. But what being of such power has the patience to serve a mortal in this fashion? And is this service voluntary or forced? And why symbols and incantations anyway? Why should a spirit care which direction you're facing, which chants you make in long-forgotten languages, which symbols you're gazing upon, and where the stars are? Do the beings force themselves to execute the will of those with these special symbols and special chants? Or has this servitude been forced upon them? One struggles to envision any sentient being enforcing against themselves. Do they choose to be chained to these symbols and preparations? Would they choose otherwise?
But oh, to be free. Not to have to go, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need? To be my
And indeed, even the most benign exorcisms of the Christian, Catholic, and Islamic churches is still just magic. There's nothing special about the sound waves produced during these prayers that forces a demon from his host. So some other force must lie in wait, waiting for the correct words to be uttered, so that he may drive away the malevolent spirit. But who or what is this other entity? And is it the same entity who enforces their compliance in black magic? When looking for the Illuminati's answers to these questions, one of the first books to emerge on radar is the Necronomicon.
Now, Abdul will read from the Necronomicon.
Azak, Azuri, Galaneth, Maledictu, Nosferamus, and Principe.
For within the pages of the Necronomicon lie the very secrets of the universe, both past and future.
Many authors have written a Necronomicon of their own, but the original was written by an Arab named Abdul al-Hazred, and was later translated by Dr. John Dee in the 16th century. Many know John Dee as the founder of the British Secret Service and the original 007, signing his memos to Queen Elizabeth with 007, who was both her spy and her astrologer. Abdul al-Hazred, the writer of the first Necronomicon, was said to have written it in the 8th century, at the age of 76, just before his death in Damascus. One of the most interesting things about John Dee's translation, as opposed to the other versions of the Necronomicon, or any other books about black magic you'll find out there, is the apologetic tone it's written in. Abdul al-Hazred hated the demons who enlightened him, feared for his body, and feared for his eternal soul even more, and hated his deeds upon the earth, and stated such many times throughout the text. The universe described by this deepest of deep insiders came straight out of the Matrix. A world where the soul and the body can part, and the soul can travel the universe while the body waits idle, and if either body dies while you're plugged into the Matrix, you're gone. A world where beings just outside of our sight feed off the etheric energy of man, a world full of beings who live not in the spaces known to man, but in the angles and spaces between. Beings called maskim, who scavenge, ready to drag away the souls of the dead. Beings who live in timeless kingdoms beneath the earth and seas, and even beings among us, in human disguise. The Necronomicon also tells the tale of a spiritual battle, a tale where dark gods, called the Ancient Ones or Old Ones, are cast from heaven to the darkest place in the universe, called the Agigi. There they long brood for a revenge against the stars of heaven for a battle long lost, and ever await a celestial event. And when the stars are right, Cthulhu their priest, and Azagthoth their leader, will lead the Ancient Ones out of their prison. Cthulhu, the beast of the apocalypse, will establish his kingdom upon the earth, from which he will lead an army that will bring a war to the front door of God himself. According to his story, his introduction into the world of magic and the unseen began on a rather mysterious night that he would later sum up in one word, Cthulhu. He was walking through the mountains at night when he stumbled across a large gray stone, the size of a man, with 3 strange carvings on it. He decided to set up camp, start a fire, and fall asleep. He was awakened by the howl of a wolf close at hand. Then, the gray stone began to rise slowly off the ground. He then heard the sound of men approaching and hid behind a bush. Several men in black robes approached the floating stone without fear and began to murmur incantations. Slowly, large serpents, one after the other, rose from the ground beneath the floating stone. Then Alhazred noticed the ground he was hiding on has become wet and the fluid to be blood-like. At the realization that the ground beneath his hiding place has become blood, he reveals his presence to the black-robed men. Casting their ritual into disorder, the mysterious priests begin chasing Alhazred. After running at high speeds for a short while, he eventually falls to the ground and notices that there are none pursuing him. Returning to the site of the stone, he notices that the priests empty robes upon the ground. He uses a stick to investigate the robe, but it appeared as though the priest simply disappeared. He returned to his campground to find the large gray stone lying upon the ground. The large lizards were gone, and several empty black robes strewn around the campsite. Symbols on the gray stone, however, were glowing. From there, step by step, Abdul Alhazred began to wander and dabble further and further into the occult. Eventually, Alhazred would claim that he spoke with the souls of slain men and women who died at childbirth, spoke with watchers, live gods, dead gods, and even deader demons. He claims to have opened portals and walked into all the dimensions, and passed all 9 gates. During his travels throughout this dimension and others, his family and their livestock suffer unusual and suspicious deaths. Abdul Alhazred himself is said to have died in the streets of Damascus after being torn to pieces by invisible beings. Alhazred claims that the arcane and ancient knowledge you're about to learn has been forgotten by all except the worshippers of the Ancient Ones, or the demons. What you're about to hear are the secret teachings of the Illuminati. An easy way to think of extra dimensions and the beings that reside in them is birds and humans. Because of gravity, humans are subject to a 2-dimensional surface, bound to the surface of a fabric. A wall, 12 feet high or more, can block his way. A bird, on the other hand, would not be bound by a 12-foot wall, or even a 30-foot wall. A bird would have to be contained in an additional way, and having access to the 3rd dimension, so must their cage be 3-dimensional. Now if you were to attempt to attack a bird who is, say, pecking the ground for worms, he would be within your grasp and forever in potential danger as long as he is within 12 feet of the ground. Now there's nothing special about the air above your head, and the 12 feet to the left and the right is no different than 12 feet straight up. They can both be easily measured in the same units and contain the same combination of gases. So what's different about 12 feet straight up? You don't have access to that dimension. Now there's nothing mystical about the current location of the bird, and there's nothing mystifying about the direction he just moved, and there's certainly nothing mysterious about a bird itself, aside from the surviving the things they eat. It has the same needs and similar vulnerabilities. Its parts are what you would call material, or quote-unquote real. This is a very easy way of thinking about ghosts and demons. The reason you can't trap a ghost in a particular room, or even in the house, is the very same reason you can't contain a bird in a prison yard. Having access to that extra dimension, the ghost will simply quote-unquote fly over the walls of your home, but from your perspective, appearing to walk right through them. So why do we lose track of a ghost when it flies in the direction that we can't move? The direction the ghost is moving is the direction that we call time. With access to the time dimension, even the thickest stone wall can be walked over as if it were an infinitely thin object, like a sheet of paper. 3-dimensional objects existing in a 4-dimensional universe will, whether perceivably or not, be infinitely thin on one side, so the beings vanish, like a submarine vanishes from those on boats as the submarine begins to move in the direction that the boat cannot. And there's nothing mystical about a submarine either. But this lofty viewpoint in the time dimension may have another effect, the perception of simultaneity. Imagine a man walking in the woods and a bird flying 500 feet above him. Now there's a lake a mile away. The man can't see it, and so by consequence, the lake is 20 minutes in his future. But the bird can already see the lake, so what is in that man's future is already part of the bird's present. Equally, things and places that the man thinks are in his past are simply a glance away for the bird. Although it has a good view of things that will be crossing your path by seeing what's heading in your direction, there's no real way for the bird to know exactly what awaits you at the lake. Also, events that are happening at distant places can be witnessed at the same time by the bird. Now, a bird isn't smarter than you, it just has a better view and access to that extra dimension. And that's how you should think of these beings. They are varying intelligence, but do not believe that their abilities reflect their intelligence nor their moral nature. Similar to the tradition of the Hebrew Kabbalah, the Necronomicon speaks of multiple layers of reality. Similar to Einstein's view of the universe as four-dimensional spheres, the Necronomicon also refers to them as spheres, where there are parallel universes in layers below and above us, and these universes are called spheres. Each of these extra dimensions may be accessed through a gate, and this gate is created during the ritual. The Necronomicon speaks of 7 spheres outside of our own and a gate to enter each of them. You must access gates in their proper order. For instance, you may not meet the sun god who resides in the 4th sphere until you've passed the 3rd gate, which belongs to Inanna, aka Ishtar. Each sphere is ruled by a different god, and you must open the gates in the correct sequence. The structure of the universe laid down by the Kabbalah is a tradition that suggests that the universe actually has separate universes, and these are called Sephirim. The Kabbalah teaches that the whole universe is based on balance, and that every particle in the material world has a counterpart in heaven. Kabbalists also believe that God has made previous universes, but those universes failed. The Necronomicon speaks of 9 gates total. The first 7 are part of what's called the inner world, while the last 2 are part of what's called the outer, where the darkest of the dark entities live. In the movie The 9 Gates with Johnny Depp, a book called The 9 Gates of the Kingdom of Shadows includes instructions for the first 8 gates of the passage. The correct ritual to pass the 9th gate, however, is cryptically hidden in not 1, but 3 books. In the beginning of the movie, the viewer finds themselves going down a dark path, passing 9 gates as the pre-film credits roll, and, as you approach the 9th gate, you walk into illumination. In the movie, the book The 9 Gates of the Kingdom of Shadows was based on another fictional text called the Necronomicon.
While studying the black arts in Prague, he acquired a copy of the dread Necronomicon. This is Tolkien's adaptation of that work, which was written by Lucifer himself. After they burned him at the stake, a secret society was founded to perpetuate its memory and preserve its secrets.
Necronomicon sounds a lot like the Necronomicon, and, just like in the movie, Abdul al-Hazred is conspicuously vague about the details of the 9th gate. It's quite clear that the book from the movie, The 9th Gate, The 9 Gates of the Kingdom of Shadows, is actually a reference to the Necronomicon. Al-Hazred hints that these beings we call demons, who live outside the mortal world, exist in strange time.
As long as we get you home before it's midnight in the mortal world.
But that's only 2 hours from now.
Well, don't panic, dear. You see, time works differently in Halloween Town. 2 hours there might be 2 days here, or 2 weeks if we're on vacation.
He states that the spirits live in an extra dimension that is wrapped inside every point in space.
Beyond the gate dwell now the old ones, not in the spaces known unto men, but in the angles betwixt them.
You're a prisoner? It's all part and parcel the whole genie gig.
Phenomenal cosmic powers!
Itty-bitty living space.
Oh, gee.
The worst demons have been banished to a place called the Igigi, a place where, with their leader Azagthoth, they wait for a celestial event that heralds their coming. For a wizard to venture forth into the pit in safety, he must first sell his soul and remove his name from the stars. These beings, called the Ancient Ones, did incredible evils on the earth, and were cast to the Igigi by the Elder Lords Enki, Anu, Enlil, and Marduk. The Necronomicon speaks of these spheres as if they are wandering. It leads on to the fact that when the fabric of 2 spheres touches, the beings and objects in those parts of the 2 universes can interact during this time. If these collisions are rhythmic, it may explain why certain beings can only be invoked on certain nights. Perhaps even the moon's weight may press upon the fabric of space-time, further closing the distance between our plane of existence and another. The Necronomicon's ladder of lights, with its 7 steps, is very similar to the Kabbalistic ladder, with its 7 steps. The Kabbalists even attribute the various steps on the ladder with the same planet the Necronomicon does. A ladder with 7 steps to the heavens also occurs in the old Persian and Hindu religion. Or what about the Masonic ladder, the ladder of Kadash? Or Jacob's ladder from the Bible? For instance, here's Genesis chapter 28:12.
And he dreamed, and behold a ladder set upon the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven, and behold the angels of God ascending and descending on it.
These gates are even referred to as 7 seals, just like the 7 seals from the book of Revelation. Another fascinating aspect of the book is the Necronomicon's inclusion of a recipe for LSD, which Abdul al-Hazred called space mead. The mixture is made from the soaking of crushed morning glory seeds in wood alcohol for 2 days, removing the mush created and allowing the residual fluid to evaporate, leaving behind a yellowish resin. The mush removed earlier should then be re-soaked, strained out again, and the resulting mixture allowed to evaporate, as was done before. He suggests that only 30 grams of this compound is enough to provide astral flight for the body. The Necronomicon is a real grab bag of mythologies. Biblical, Babylonian, and Islamic symbolism and concepts are all drawn from freely, but the Necronomicon's main parallels are Kabbalistic and Sumerian. The gods, for the most part, are referred to in their Sumerian names. First, the bad gods. Now the Necronomicon doesn't always speak in a black and white manner regarding the morality of a certain character, god, or race, but for the most part, it does. Al-Hazred never fails to mention when a certain god, demon, watcher, or race is hostile to mankind, and will give warnings proportional to the danger. Cthulhu is a character made famous by H.P. Lovecraft. Many descriptions of Cthulhu parallel the Antichrist from the Bible. Even Aleister Crowley associated Cthulhu with the beast 666. Like the Antichrist from the Bible, Cthulhu is said to be dead, but dreaming, and also similar to the Antichrist, his idol body will rise from the sea and establish his kingdom on earth. Cthulhu is one of the few gods who cannot be conjured but can, during ritual, possess someone who is present. From there, the possessed host will witness the dreams and thoughts of Cthulhu. Cthulhu is considered the priest of the Old Ones, and one of their main leaders. The reason for Cthulhu worship is only so that he'll be partial to you when he rises from the sea and establishes his kingdom on earth. Just like in the movie Dagon, Ia Cthulhu is one of the most common incantations in the Necronomicon.
Ia, Cthulhu Fatagan!
Ia, Cthulhu Fatagan!
Yog-Sothoth is an all-seeing eye kind of character. He is the keymaster and the gate between the worlds. He is described more specifically as the gate the Old Ones will return to Earth through. It is said that all time and space are one to him. Beneath him are 13 globes, or servants of Yog-Sothoth. These are demons, which after a ritual will bestow one of many various gifts. Then there's Azagthoth, the blind mad god. This god is described as extremely powerful, insane, a black magician, and leader of the Old Ones. At the center of all infinity, the center of the universe, he dwells with his multitudes. He is the Lord of Chaos, and once he is invoked, he is virtually impossible to put back in his lamp. Al-Hazred warns against the summoning of this god. When the stars are in their correct places, and when our sphere nears Agigi, Azagthoth will lead the Old Ones out of the abyss. This prophetic event has been witnessed in countless movies. Its parallel in the book of Revelation is when the bottomless pit is opened, and Apollo and his hordes of locusts ascend from the abyss and come to earth. In Revelation chapter 9, verse 1, we read, "And I saw a star fall from heaven to the earth, and he was given the key to the shaft of the bottomless pit. He opened the shaft of the bottomless pit, and from the shaft rose smoke like the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened with the smoke of the shaft. Then from the smoke came locusts on the earth, and they were given power like the power of scorpions of the earth, and they were told not to harm the grass of the earth, or any green thing that groweth, or any tree." In movies like The Day the Earth Stood Still, you have a horde of insects who go about devouring all that is man-made, while leaving every green thing untouched. This is Azog-Thoth and his horde. Nyarlathotep was created as the messenger of the Ancient Ones. He is said to be a go-between for humans and the Abyss's most foul gods. He is described as a shapeshifter with unspeakable darkness in his heart and countless faces. His most common nicknames are Lord of the Wood and the Creeping Chaos. For those of you who have seen Hollywood Insiders, full disclosure, you're familiar with the Joker character Asmodeus and his role as the go-between. Repeatedly, Nyarlathotep is associated with chaos. This is, I suspect, Nyarlathotep.
Upset the established order, and everything becomes chaos. I'm an agent of chaos. Oh, and you know the thing about chaos? It's beer.
Next we have Kingu, the military commander of the demonic hordes. Humans are said to have been made from his blood, and from this comes the hole in man's heart, humanity's rebellious, demonic nature. It is due to humanity's demonic bloodline that we may wield authority over the demonic forces that lay outside. Marduk is said to have done this on purpose, so that the covenant between demons and humans would be sealed forever. Now, the demons must answer to the one race they hate most, humans. Tiamat is said to have been fighting the Elder Lords for ages, and spawned a multitude of creatures for her army. She is the goddess of the primeval depths, and also, that after being defeated by Marduk, she was torn into two pieces. These two pieces would form the universe we know. Tiamat has many servants among mankind. And finally, we have Ereshkigal. Ereshkigal seems to be another name for Tiamat. In either case, Ereshkigal is called the Queen of the Underworld, Queen of the Dead, and Queen of the Outside. She once imprisoned Inanna in the underworld, but was freed by Ea. She has many servants and even an army. As for the good gods, first we have Inanna, aka Columbia, Diana, Queen of Heaven, Mistress of the Gods, Venus, and Ishtar. Although Alhazred speaks of Inanna in a mostly positive light, her character attributes associate her with the whore of Babylon. Inanna is said to be the guardian of the third gate. It is said that she descended into the underworld and conquered its denizens. Once her gate is passed, you may use her abilities even while in other spheres. Anu is one of the Elder Lords who first went to war against the Old Ones and sealed them beyond the gates. He is also one of the first 3 Great Watchers, called the Father of Heaven. As stated earlier, Ea's name is chanted in almost all of the ritual incantations. He is, along with Anu and Enlil, among the 3 Great Elder Lords and the original Watchers. Ea is also known as Enki, and the father of Marduk, and handed down to humans the method by which to exorcise and banish demons. Anu, Ea, and another great watcher, Enlil, may be summoned and invoked in a fashion similar to the other demons. Marduk is the son of Enki, and reminds you of a chosen one. Marduk led the fight against the Ancient Ones and defeated Ereshkigal. Marduk is the guardian of the 6th gate, and, like Inanna, can be invoked to protect you against any antagonistic entity. But Alhazred warns that summoning Marduk is a great responsibility, and to do so flippantly may be dangerous, because the priest stands to offend Marduk. Marduk is responsible for sealing the magical contract with the demons by using Kingu's blood to form man. Marduk is said to have spawned a race of his own here on Earth. Shamash is the sun god, and guardian of the 4th gate. He, like the rest of the rulers of the spheres, has forged a covenant with man and can be invoked. And lastly, you have the Evil 7. Alhazred, like the Hebrew traditions, suggests that there are 7 main demons who act as workers of darkness in our world. They are neither male or female and are extremely inhumane. It is said that they stretch themselves out like chains and are ministers for Tiamat. They are referred to as the 7 Anunnaki, extremely powerful in magic and incessantly make trouble for mankind. First and oldest of the races are the Elders, also called the Elder Lords, or the Elder Things. These beings precede the existence of the Old Ones. This group has made a pact with mankind so that we may call upon their assistance with magic. This group is ruled by 3 gods, Enki, Enlil, and Anu, who would later spawn a race called the Watchers. This group of gods lives, according to the Necronomicon, remotely in the heavens. It was members of the Elder race that trapped the Ancient Ones in the bottomless pit. Then there's the Old Ones, referred to as the Ancient Ones or those from outside. These beings are demons to Christians and jinn to Muslims. This race too, because of the blood of Kingu, is subject to the will of man, granted the proper sacrifice and ritual has been performed. The Old Ones were created and came to Earth long before the creation of man. During this time, the Necronomicon points out, they filled the Earth with corruption. They erected great cities at Earth's poles. Their children, the Nephilim, began to cover the Earth. They were worshipped like gods, and when the Elder Lords looked down from heaven and seeing the corruption, they set their seal against the Ancient Ones and cast them into the bottomless pit.
Wantonly, the Old Ones trod the ways of darkness, and their blasphemies were great upon the earth. All creation bowed beneath their might and knew them for their wickedness. And the Elder Lords opened their eyes and beheld the abominations of those that ravaged the earth. In their wrath, they set their hand against the Old Ones, staying them in the midst of their iniquity, and casting them forth from the earth to the void beyond the plains where chaos reigns and form abideth not. And the Elder Lords set their seal upon the gateway, and the power of the Old Ones prevailed not against its might.
It is said that their very sight is a blasphemy to the senses, because they come from a crooked world where the shape of space is so warped that the very sight is painful to the eye.
But the sight of the Ancient Ones is a blasphemy to the ordinary senses of a man, for that come from a world that is not straight, but crooked, and their existence is of forms unnatural and painful to the eye and to the mind.
Today, the Old Ones still wait in the bottomless pit, waiting for a celestial event. This celestial event doesn't necessarily have to be one that happens in our heavens. Maybe, perhaps, this is one of merging, of imminent collision of our universe and another. The conflict between the Elder Lords and the Ancient Ones sounds precisely like the story of ancient Atlantis versus Lemuria. Both were nearly destroyed in the conflict, and the Elder Gods were quite weakened. The demons are constantly treading about, looking for open gates because they long entrance into our world. Alhazred claims that the dead can be summoned at almost any time, and unlike some of the stronger demons, may be willing to cooperate. Then there are the Maskin. These are the hunters of souls. They apparently drag away the soul after someone dies. They are led by their queen, Ereshkigal. The picture Abdul Alhazred paints of spirits and demons is very similar to the version painted by Islam. The Muslims call these demons jinn, which is where the word genie comes from. The Muslims say that there are many types of jinn. Some are spirits, some dogs and snakes, some with wings and fly, and others look human. They say jinn come in both male and female and emerge mainly at night. Aside from the classical conception of a genie, something else has worked its way into popular culture: the making of a wish after seeing a shooting star. Muslims say that when you see a shooting star, a jinn just got kicked out of the heavens and cast back to our earth. This is probably code for a streaking UFO. Everyone knows that genies grant wishes, so when you see a falling star, you've just seen a genie. So, you make a wish. Jinns, like the Ancient Ones from the Necronomicon, were created before mankind and filled the earth with corruption. Like the demons from the Necronomicon, they can be banished with incantations and made to do what is against their will. These beings can also survey the habitation of men without his knowing. And the Muslims also claim that there is a pact or contract between the jinn and mankind. Alhazred claims that some demons feed off human emotion like food, and can actually become fat from death.
Outside the limit of our sight, feeding off us, perched on top of us from birth to death, are our owners. Our owners. They have us. They control us. They are our masters. Wake up. They're all about you, all around you.
The Necronomicon also speaks of the Migu, agents of Nyarlathotep, who come from the universe beyond the 8th Gate, a place called Yagath. Alhazred seems to speak about UFOs and abductions in one comment about the Migu.
It is of these same spawn of Yagath that it is said do carry the minds of wizards and other men unto Yagath, clad within amphoria of strange metal and design. With these minds thus preserved, they are thus able to make the trip across the gulf under the rim.
This seems to reference metal vehicles that can travel to other spheres without astral flight. He also speaks about machines that are used to converse with the abducted.
In a state of dreamless sleep do these minds wait, requiring no sustenance until awakened by the Migu, and, through strange mechanizations, and thus given the power to converse, of vision, and of hearing, without the mortal body being intact, or that is, connected to the mind.
Here is depicted what appears to be a machine, because it doesn't resemble the magical symbols. This group was sent by the Elder Lords. It is a spirit being whose duty it is to watch over you, perhaps provided as a counterweight to the jinn and their influence, which is mainly detrimental. They, like the demons, demand sacrifice and ritual in order to invoke directly. If the calling of a watcher is done inappropriately, the watcher may turn on you and slay you. When conjuring a watcher, you must use symbols located on your person or hand gestures in order to remind them of the covenant they have sworn with our race. The Necronomicon claims that humans came extremely late in the game. Alhazred reiterates the incredible dangers that face humans from the world without. Alhazred also makes an interesting remark regarding the possible construction method of the pyramids. He speaks of a race of human beings who called themselves the Thul.
From the earth did the people of Muthul mine a strange ore which they did place in baskets made of lead. This ore did they place in great ovens to burn, and thus create the etheric energies that they used within their cities. With these energies did they bring light to lamps without oil or wick, and also did they use these energies to move the great stones of which they built their great cities.
And for those of you who have seen Hollywood Insider's Full Disclosure, you should know that Abdul Alhazred confirms for us the existence of vampires, and even the ancient Sumerians, who predate all the vampire legends of medieval Europe by thousands of years, had a word for vampire: Akakuru. Alhazred makes mention that these teachings have been forgotten by the bulk of man, and only the worshippers of the ancient ones still retain them. Today, we call this group the Illuminati, the Enlightened Ones, a collection of tightly woven secret societies with these teachings at their core.